Find out what they're going to be doing. Exactly. So far, we're passing much better results under circumstances. So we're tickled with that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to look at dealing with sin. And the objective, to make sure everything's going there, and it's right here too, is to help young Christians, you gentlemen, learn how to deal effectively with the problem of sin in their lives. Now, the first part of this is kind of a two-part session, class. A little bit of lecture, and then I have a demonstration I'll share with you. The lecture part, give credit where credit's due, is I didn't I didn't write it. I have borrowed heavily from Bob and Sandra Walker, and one of the books they have written is Christ in You, the Hope of Glory. And this is a part of one of those lessons that I thought fit perfect with what was the topic, so I wanted to share that with you. And then the demonstration, some of the thoughts of my own, so it may not be as good as the first part. Anyway. So we asked the question, what does a Christian do about sin? Well, one thing to remember, sin is not a matter of enough or degree. Like, have I sinned enough, or how much can I sin? That's not the issue. I mean, that's not something to be considered. It's not an issue of degree, or whether you've done it enough or not to lose salvation. I asked the question, but what if I have sinned? Well, sin is a transgression. The wages of sin is death. A couple of quick examples. I tell a lie. And you done that and say, will that condemn me? Yes, it will. A lie will condemn you. If you remember in Acts chapter 5, verses 1 through 11, it tells about Ananias and Sapphira. They were, some of y'all probably remember that story. It's when the church was very new. They were still in Jerusalem. And Ananias and Sapphira, they were husband and wife. They had sold possession. They were collecting money for the church in its infancy, sharing that among the people. Well, they'd sold a possession, held some of that back, and given to the apostles. And Peter addressed that. And y'all remember what happened to Ananias and Sapphira from them telling a lie? They died. They were killed. That was to give an example for the church. So even a lie will condemn you. So what should I do about my lie? Well, hopefully you'll feel terrible that you did it. You'll repudiate that deed instantly. You'll correct that lie, try to restore the truth. You'll ask and pray to God for forgiveness, and hopefully you'll resolve to do better. Same thing if you've stolen something. Will that condemn you? Yes, it will. It's a sin. It will condemn you. What should you do about your theft? Well, you should feel terrible that you did it. Repudiate the deed instantly. Correct the theft. Restore the item if possible. Ask, pray to God for forgiveness, and resolve to do better next time. That's what you're trying to do. As y'all know, sin is the breaking of God's law. And I emphasize that big period right there. Sin is the breaking of God's law. That's it. Break God's law, you sin. Well, how do you know if you've sinned enough to lose salvation? Can we carry a sack of sin around with us? No. If we did, how do we know how big that sack can be? If we make that presumptuous determination that you can carry around a sack of sin and still be okay with God, can we just ignore any sins we deem appropriate to be put in the sack? I'll remind you, sin is a breaking of God's law. And wouldn't there be a burden of guilt for carrying or dragging that sack of sin around? Do you feel guilty? And is that really the Lord's desire? To carry a sack of sin around in your life? Actually, a sincere Christian is going to be very conscious and sensitive of most of the sins he commits. Some of them he may not be knowledgeable of, but most of them he should be very sensitive, conscious about that. So are we saying that a Christian must strive to avoid sin at all costs? Isn't that trying to be perfectly sinless? And how does that differ from the idea of righteousness through works? The Scriptures teach us that we are to strive unto perfection. Matthew 5, verse 48, it says, "Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect." We are to abhor that which is evil, please that which is good. We find that in Romans chapter 1. Thus, it is not all right for us to do any sin. The difference between these two efforts to be sinless, one that you're striving to avoid sin, and being righteous through our works, is motive and purpose. One way aims to obey God out of love for God, and to desire to take of His nature. Let's turn over to 2 Peter chapter 1. I'll read verses 3 through 4. 2 Peter 1. Verse 3 and 4. As His divine nature has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of Him who called us by glory and virtue, by which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. So we are trying to escape the world through lust and be partakers of the divine nature. Now, one word thing of being partakers of the divine nature is to be holy. We strive to be holy. That's right. Oh. Okay. I didn't know it was dead. Can you hear me, though? Does everybody hear me all right? Hopefully I'm loud enough. The one way we're aiming to obey God out of love to God, desiring to take His nature. On the other hand, if our aim is just to justify ourselves, so that we do not need the forgiveness of God and make righteousness, then our motive is misdirected and the result will be bad. We think if we just justify ourselves, we don't need the forgiveness of God, that we can be perfectly righteous. I need that. One way. I mentioned motive and purpose. The motive, and this is from Webster's New World Dictionary. Motive is some inner drive, impulse, etc., that causes one to act in a certain way. Intent, goal. Motive is important in Christian. Purpose is what one plans to get or do, intention or aim, the resolution or determination. So motive and purpose needs to drive what you do as a Christian. Have proper motives and proper purpose. Thank you. Well, we want to ask ourselves, can a Christian sin? But a Christian does not sin, does he? Or conversely, if I'm sinning, I'm not a Christian, am I? Well, certainly a Christian is not supposed to sin, but let's see what God's Word says about the matter. Righteousness can be thought of in two senses. We have the righteousness there is through faith and given to us through God's forgiveness. That's one type of righteousness. We also have another type. It's the righteousness we enjoy when we are doing right things, when we are living a righteous life. That's another type of righteousness. Both of those are righteousness, aren't they? On the righteousness there is through faith. In Romans 1:17 it says, "The just shall live by faith." Romans 3:22 the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ to all and on all who believe. There is a righteousness given to us through God's forgiveness. In Romans chapter 4, verse 5 through 8, don't turn there. Romans 4, starting at verse 5. But to him who does not work but believes on him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is accounted for righteousness. Just as David also describes the blessedness of the man to whom God imputes righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord shall not impute sin. So that is the righteousness given to us through God's forgiveness. That God has given us that, and we didn't earn it. There's also the righteousness we enjoy when we're doing the right things and living a righteous life, the second part there. The antithesis of this, and this gets back to the book we've been looking at, 1 John, or the Epistle of John, in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 4, the opposite of a righteous life is verse 3, chapter 3, verse 4, 1 John. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness and sin of lawlessness. But in 1 John, in verse 7, as you read on down, he who practices righteousness is righteous. This reference in 1 John chapter 3 has to do with the performance of good and righteous deeds, and the Christian's life is to be filled with these good and righteous deeds. You'll notice that he uses the word in verse 4, commit. Commit unrighteous or lawlessness or sin, committing sin. And that's kind of has a sense of being short or temporary. But the word he uses in verse 7 of practicing righteousness, hopefully practice makes perfect. It's more a long-term kind of thing. You practice over and over again to do what's right. And that scripture does not say we're to perfect righteousness, to be righteous, or to practice righteousness, trying to be righteous. Only one has perfected righteousness. That was Jesus Christ. So we need to practice. There are basically two different ways to explain how one is born of God and does not sin. And if you read down there in verse 9, or how the one who abides in him does not sin. Back up in verse 6. So verse 9 says, whoever has been born of God does not sin, for his seed remains in him, and he cannot sin because he has been born of God. Back up in verse 6. Whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sins has neither seen him nor known him. So one way to interpret 1 John 3:7, he who practices righteousness is righteous as God's plan of righteousness. That is, that righteousness is the keeping of the law. That's what it is. And sin is the transgression of the law. So sin cannot equal righteousness. So if you're sinning, you're not righteous. If you're righteous, you're not sinning, right? But if we apply that strictly to 1 John 3:7, that would amount to he that doeth them shall live in them. That statement was applied by Paul to the law of Moses in Galatians 3, chapter 12. If this is the way we remain righteous, then it's identical to the law of Moses in this regard, that we must never commit even one sin if we hope to be righteous before God. That interpretation right there would have John denying himself. In 1 John 1, chapter 8, chapter 1, verse 8, it says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. He goes on to point out the law of pardon for a Christian. If you read on down through verse 9 and the first verse of chapter 2, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say that we have not sinned, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. My little children, these things are right to you, so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. But also deny the universal human experience, except for Christ. And that's mentioned in Romans chapter 3 and verse 23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That is the universal human experience. And all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. The other way to understand the verses we looked at in 1 John chapter 3, verse 6 and 9, as referring to a lifestyle, to a walk, and not to an occasional stumble. The stumble is sin, but is not a constant lifestyle. The one who lives a life of sin is a servant of sin. The one who lives a life of righteousness is a servant of righteousness. Let's turn back to Romans chapter 6, verse 15 through 18. Read that. Romans 6, 15 through 18. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under law but under grace? Certainly not. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves slaves to obey, you are that one slaves whom you obey, whether of sin leading to death or of obedience leading to righteousness? But God be thanked that though you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine to which you were delivered. And having been set free from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. With this passage in Romans 6 in mind, let's look back at 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. I didn't mean to blow y'all out coughing like that. So we're going to look at 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, then make sense of what we've been studying in 1 John 3, verses 6 and 9. And we'll reconcile it with what it says back in chapter 1, verses 8 and 10. So, 5 through 7. This is the message that we have heard from him and declare to you that God is light, in him is no darkness at all. We say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. Blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. Remember back in 3, verse 16 through 6, it says, whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sins will neither sin for no man. 9, whoever is born of God does not sin, but he remains in him and cannot sin because he is born of God. We've got to reconcile that with verse 8 in chapter 1. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. And also verse 10, if we say that we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not. So the only way to reconcile these passages in John is to understand that this is a lifestyle of God. Not that we're being perfectly following the law of Christ, but we're trying to do our best. This is also consistent with evidence that's generally found in the Bible. If we apply the chapter 3, verse 6 and 9 in the literal sense, that we have to be perfectly sinless, we couldn't apply that to Abraham. Because Abraham, even though he was called a friend of God, and his life was dedicated to God, he stumbled. Now, most of y'all know the story of Abraham. So did David. On the other hand, any righteousness that wicked King Ahab had was just accidental. Life was devoted to sin, not to God. What do we need to do? We need to walk in the light. 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. It's not the idea of the child of God stepping from light into darkness, then back to light, then to darkness again. That's not the idea. Nor does walking in the light mean perfect obedience. We need to love the Lord with all our hearts, in Matthew 22:37. This doesn't mean that our love is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that our love is going to be complete. It means that we love God to the point that we commit our lives to Him, that we deeply appreciate Him, and we serve Him. We need to fight the good fight. We need to finish the race. We need to keep the faith, as it was mentioned to Timothy, 2 Timothy 4, chapter 7, verse 7. We need to endure tribulations, knowing that these tribulations will produce perseverance. Perseverance will produce character. Character will produce hope, and hope does not disappoint. Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. That's what we need to do. We need to become vessels of honor. Let's look over at 2 Timothy. Verse 20 through 22. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel of honor, sanctified and useful for the masters, prepared for every good work. Flee also youthful lusts, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Now, I have a demonstration of how we can effectively deal effectively with the problem of sin in the Christian's life. We're keeping in mind this advice that Paul had given his young friend Timothy, his protege. We have this demonstration, and Haley was going to help me with that. Come on up, Haley. All right, let's see. I'll just sit down right for a minute. Let's see what I got in here. What I brought. Let's see. Now these are carefully selected. Pick glass so the light would shine through. Nice glass jar there. Nothing can be hidden in these. You can see through them. I'll wash these and dry these to get them ready for this presentation. And I wanted a glass so I could put good things in this, so I could put pure things in here. Got several of them here. Wrap them up real careful, nice and clean. These these jars or vessels represent how life is special to God. How He wants a special human life to hold good things, pure things. The glass is transparent, as our life is transparent to God and does not hide what's inside. You can see what's inside this jar. God can see what's inside your life. He chose a clear vessel so He could see everything in your life. I also have here some water, pure life water. Um, this is very clean, filtered water. Let's see. It says here on the label, purified water. Perfectly clean. Nice water. It's refreshing. It tastes good. It's good for you. It's what you really want and need, right? You really have to do water. I got some other things here. That's this. That's a big old container of dirty oil. Dirty oil out of an old car. I don't want it. It's no good to me anymore. It's not refreshing. I just want to get rid of it because it pollutes. Sure, I don't want to drink it. I don't even want to taste it. Not even a little bit of it. I don't want any of that. Unlike the water. I got a smaller one here. Use a small one for the demonstration here. I got Caleb up here for two reasons. One of them is just need to help me hold some things as I do this demonstration. And another thing, I spent 2 days cleaning the carpet in here, and if I spill some of this, it's no, I'm kidding. As y'all know, this water and oil won't mix, and so the purity of the water, or the holiness of this water, and sin, which is represented by our oil, will not mix. The oil will contaminate this water, and as sin contaminates holiness or purity. Now, I got this size jar. This, I think, is going to be a picture of life. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So we're going to start. This is what you're going to work. This is a flashlight. You push that white button, turn it on. Here. We're going to start filling this life with pure water. This jar, this vessel with pure water. Indicating how ferment, see, how the young are taught of good, how they're taught of God, how they're taught of Jesus by their mother and father, how they're taught by their grandparents, how they go to Bible class when they're young, and learn the good stories from the Bible. And their life goes on, and they fill up this water. It's a short life. Yeah. That's what sound out like together. And you can just say that life there. Y'all see that? Just real easy. Not a bit of problem. Full of good water, but it didn't last very long. It was done, but we like that. We know that's clean. We'll set that up here on this pedestal. That is special. A life that was that has no dirty oil in it, no sin in it. This represents how the very young are knowledgeable of sin. That they're safe because of that innocence. They never had sin in their lives because of that. We got another jar here. This is going to be, I'll say, a 33-year-old life. Okay? So we'll start living this life, and hopefully they've got a good parents and go to a good church, and they have good water going into their life. So we'll add some of that. And we'll say you're getting about 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You start getting an understanding and a consciousness of sin. Starts becoming apparent. And it goes beyond just, obeying mom or dad or following school rules, etc. This individual is going to start realizing that he's sinned against God. So what comes into his life here is something not quite so pure or nice. And you see, it's not real clear. Definitely not worth drinking. Not so honorable now, is it? It's tainted. It's contaminated. It's unfit for consumption. And how much dirty oil in there do you think it's okay to drink? How much? Somebody want to play? Huh? No? Josh, you said no? Good job. How about a water? You catch it? Now watch up behind him. It's not that he can't catch. It's not going in too good. Have some pure life water. None of this is good. So what do you do about that? Well, you know what? We got a do-over. We get one. So, do-over. That's baptism. We got a new life. That sin's gone. You might notice that oil stain inside of that glass. And that might represent the stain of sin. Even though it's been removed from your life, it leaves a stain. You know, it takes a lot of work to get rid of that stain. God don't hold you account for it, but it'll affect your life. So it takes a while to get that all cleaned out. But we can start filling that jar again with good water. We'll continue on. One other point. We start filling that jar again, we'll have a longer life this time. We've been baptized, we're filling our jar again. We'll say this is our, was it 70, 70-year-old thing, 70-year-old life. So, we started over. You know, on the 33-year-old jar I showed you, this size, this is a different one. One person filled that all the way up. Got any older? Who's that? Jesus. Finish. I'll have water. All right. So we'll some more water in that to a jar. So we're living our life on. And we'll get about that. Guess what comes in back into our life? You don't know. More sin starts coming. Thanks for life again, doesn't it? So we've been baptized and we started over, but sin has come back into our life. You know, sin just really doesn't separate itself like this, where you just know 1 minute you're good, 1 minute you're bad. It kind of just kind of mixes up your life. Is this how you're living your life? That is, do you go to church on Sunday and Wednesday night? Do you pray some? Maybe read the Bible occasionally? Get a Bible lesson sometimes. We do good by helping and serving others every now and again. But you're laughing at them dirty jokes you hear. You curse when you really get mad. You don't seek it, but lust when the occasion presents itself as it so often does. Maybe it didn't work as hard as it should have today. Things like that. Was that flashlight, Caleb, so good through here? No, it just kind of doesn't show the light very well, does it? 1 John 5, 1 John 1, verses 5 through 7. We read that earlier. This is a message which we have heard from him and declare to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sins. Now what to do? You have this mixed up life going on. See, what do we do? Well, first thing we want to do is quit mixing. Quit mixing. You're making the contamination worse. There's nothing consistent in your life. You're confusing others. They don't know where you stand. We want to let the dirty oil separate from the water. We're going to determine the sins in our life. We're going to see and understand them. We're going to let the separation occur so that you can start to work on that. And what we're going to do to get the dirty oil, the sin out of our life, is we're going to add more water. Add more water. See what's happening? That dirty oil? They can't coexist. But as we add more water, more purity, more holiness, sin leaves your life. As oil doesn't mix with water, light cannot exist with darkness. So I know that's kind of clouded, running down the sides. It's hard to see. But it is clearing up. If I do that long enough, every bit of that oil will come out. And you'll have a clear jar of water again. Luke 11, verse 35 through 36. Therefore take heed that the light which is in you is not darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, the whole body will be full of light, as when the bright shining of a lamp gives you light. And that's what we're shooting for. You know what we also need to do? If we ran all that oil out and then keep adding water, what would happen to that water? It just sat there for a long time. It evaporated, wouldn't it? But if we keep that jar full of water, we try to add oil to it, it's just going to run off the top. It's not going to go in there. So we need to keep it filled with pure water. We don't leave room in our life for sin to reside. We keep filling your life with good things, with honorable things, with holy things. And in the end, when it's time to cap it off, may it be found the pure life water, which makes it as special as a special. Matthew 18, verses 2 through 4. Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And in chapter 19 of Matthew, verses 14. But Jesus said, Let the children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Do you see my point there? Wow, that was so special. Can you be that special? Keep adding water. Keep adding pure life. They keep that oil displaced. They won't stay together. They keep your life full of good holiness, and the sin will go away. Displace it. Now, I had this one here. And this is a fellow that lives a real old age. The guy that spoke to you last hour, Scott Abernathy, Cameron's great-grandfather, was 102, 101. Well, can he stop? Even though he has this big jar. Can he stop filling his jar with water? Even though it is a big jar, it's got to be filled to the end. So it's time to cap it off. Then will be your reward. And your light will shine. So let me finish with this. Therefore, gird up the loins of your mind. That's a pretty peculiar phrase. Gird up the loins of your mind. But girding up the loins, y'all seen pictures of Bible people, with long robes. Under those, they had kind of knee breeches that when it was time to do work, they would pull up their robes so the robes wouldn't be in the way of them doing work and stuff them in their breeches. They were still modest, they were still covered. But they'd pull that up so it wouldn't get in the way and they'd go to work. So that means when they girded up the loins, because those breeches and the robes covered the loins, which is your midsection of your body. So be sober, rest your hope fully upon the grace that is in you, that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ, as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to former lusts, as in your ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. So fill your life with holy things, with good things. And that will displace the sin and won't enter your life. So that's how you take care of it. And that's all I got. I appreciate y'all paying attention. Hope you got something out of it. Thank you, Kelly.